We seem to have an issue recently, not just in America, but all over the world. This video is going to be a bit different and is a follow-up to my gun control video, but I want to talk about shootings, mostly in America, what the issues are, and how we can try to resolve them. Guns have been a constitutional right for America since the Declaration of Independence was signed. The right to bear arms protects us as individuals and as a nation. See, when Hitler came to power back in World War II, one of his first actions was taking away guns from the people. This ensured that they could not fight back when he carried out his plans. Korea did the same thing, and look at that country. Now, I'm not saying that all countries that are gunless because of the government ended up corrupt, but I do want to make it clear as to why it would be so scary for any government to try to remove your right to bear arms, especially when you've had that right for the country's whole life. There's a famous quote by George Washington that goes, "A free people ought not only be armed and disciplined, but they should have sufficient arms and ammunition to maintain a status of independence from any who might attempt to abuse them, which would include their own government." What is being said here is very interesting when you look at our history. Essentially, if your government tries to take your guns away, you should be afraid. Now, I'm not left or right. I don't label myself. I don't see the point. I am a free American citizen who decides what I do and do not agree with. I find it dumb that people believe that just because they're Republican, they have to believe this way, or because they're Democrat, they have to follow this. It should be based on you as an individual. Everyone is different, so I'm coming at this from my own stance, not someone else's. Recently, there have been quite a few unfortunate and possibly unavoidable incidences in the past year alone, and everyone seems to be pointing the finger at one thing or another, and it just makes me sad. Not only do we continue to let these terrible things happen, but we don't even stop to think what the actual problem is. One person blames guns. Advocates of guns come out and blame video games. Advocates for that blame the media. The media blames the people. And then the people blame guns again. And it's unreal that not a single person will take it upon themselves to stand up, stop this nonsense, and try to figure out what is actually going on. Am I going to be that person? Well, probably not, but I'm going to try to help in any way I can. Firstly, by debunking this stupid finger pointing. The first one is guns. This one is the most popular and it's stupid. If you come from a country that bans guns or is heavily restricted, I can't expect you to understand. But Americans don't all just carry guns around. We learn and teach one another to be responsible with them. We have them for our own safety and the safety of our fellow man. A commenter in one of my earlier videos posited that if someone were to open fire in a crowd, everyone would whip out their guns and start firing at each other aimlessly. But this is not a tragic cartoon. Nobody is that brainless, especially when it comes to handling a gun. And in a way, having a gun out in public can easily ensure that nobody opens fire. Why do you think these mass shootings happen in schools, clubs, and other places that are declared gun-free zones? They know they will have no resistance, and if guns were openly available in that place, nobody would want to go there and cause trouble. Think about it. You are only one guy with a gun. Imagine going to a school, firing that weapon, and every single student starts shooting back. I guarantee nobody does it ever again at that school. Now, some may ask, if we have access to more guns, isn't that causing more of an issue? And I'm not one of those people who thinks that we should have more guns, but it should be a choice for every individual. And as for it causing more problems, I want to posit this scenario. You have a man with the intent on killing people. You give him a table full of weapons, a gun, a knife, an axe, a hammer, a sword, but then you take away the gun. Do you think he's going to just give up, not have those homicidal urges anymore? Of course not. He's going to find a way to do what he's going to do regardless. Now you may say, okay, but with a knife, he'll probably kill less people. And this may very well be true, but the gun is not the issue and we need to figure out what is instead of blaming it on this nonsense. Last part about guns. There are no such thing as automatic assault rifles, and automatic guns are illegal to own without certain licenses. The only guns that we're allowed to own are semi-automatic weapons, like handguns and hunting rifles. And no, it isn't as easy as buying a part online to change the gun. That would be like saying, I have a 1000 lumen flashlight, but if I buy a knife online and a bigger battery, I can turn it into a plasma blade. It doesn't work that way. The second one is video games. I've already done a video on this before. We know that video games do not cause violence in people unless you're that special case, that 1% that becomes addicted. And that's not video games' fault as much as it is a person's mental state. how old they are, how aggressive they are, and really a lot of different factors. But there have been articles out there that have shown people to become less violent after playing video games. But that isn't the stupid part. The stupid part is instead of working to try to figure out what is causing these problems, people point the finger at video games because it's an easy target. This is what upsets me about this, but let's continue. Let's move on. The next one is the media. Now, I don't like watching the news. If anything desensitizes you, it's the news, and really it never helps that the news makes these evil people who do these kinds of things into celebrities. All I have to do to become famous and get my name out there is shoot up a school. Infamy is still fame, and that's stupid. We shouldn't broadcast their names because it's juicy. We should do it because we're telling a story, and it definitely doesn't help. But to put all the blame on media is stupid as well. Nobody goes from being a decent human being to watching the news and becoming a killer. I've said so many times that everything is person to person, which brings me to my last point. People. There are those out there who need special medication to stay sane, and it can make us into someone else. We don't like how it feels, or it simply doesn't work. And with that, medication can be a huge factor in this, but again, it can't be the only cause. There are statistically more shootings in places with higher population. This sounds like a no-brainer, but if I posit this scenario, it can help break it down a bit further. I hypothesize that you can take a box and put a mouse in it, give it a home and more than enough food to survive. Every day add another mouse, add another home, but cap the food. Eventually, this little suburban-like box will become representative of a big city, and I posit that these mice may begin to be a bit hostile. People don't like to be enclosed. This can be a nuisance that can lead to annoyance, irritation, anger, depression, and hostility, and depending on the person, who knows what they could do. Do I know how to solve this problem? Well, if I knew, it would have already been fixed. But there are so many variables to comb through for one guy to figure it out. But so many of us like to push the blame onto one thing. Mass shootings are the cause of guns, video games, medicine, the media, and if we took as much time actually looking into this instead of ignorantly blaming things, we may be that much closer to solving the problem already. I just hate how ignorant this has made us, but I can understand why. We're afraid, and it's okay to admit that. I'm gonna tell you a story before I end this video. I was hanging out with some friends and we were talking about this very subject. Later in the day, one of them made a joke, and I'll admit it was a tad distasteful, but one of my other friends got very angry, saying things like, "You can't say that, that's so insensitive and wrong. People died and you're making jokes." I stepped in and said this, "Listen, you need to understand that this is not something we all deal with the same way. Yes, the joke was a bit distasteful, and it would have done him well to think about that, but I can see where he's coming from. We live in a country, in a world, where I have to be afraid to get up in the morning and go outside. I work at a grocery store and I have to be afraid to go there. How am I supposed to know if one day someone will come in and decide to shoot the place up? Nobody wants to think that way. For some of us, the only way to cope with this, the only way to continue through as we do every day, is to act like it could never happen to us. Make it a joke, and is that so wrong? I'm terrified. I shouldn't be, but I am, and as funny as it is, the saying is true. I don't laugh because I'm insane. I laugh to stay sane. This applies. It's unfortunate that we have to live like this. This isn't something that only happens in America, but it only gets worse, and we keep letting it get worse by randomly pointing the finger. Let's get past this whole blaming one thing or another and try to legitimately figure out what's going on. Regardless as to what the cause is, none of us should have to lose our rights over this.